You lie still, the lights dim, the world outside beginning to fade. The air slows in your chest. Somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, you begin to sense something quieter. A rhythm beneath all rhythms. It is not your pulse, not the sound of blood, but something smaller, deeper. Inside every cell of your body, a silent choir is singing. You have never truly heard it before, but it has been there since the very beginning. A music written in molecules, repeating endlessly through time. The song begins with 4 letters: A, T, C, and G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, the alphabet of life. Every living thing hums its melody in this same language. A tree in a distant forest, a whale in the deep, a child just born. You, if you could shrink small enough, smaller than dust, smaller than light, you would see it. 2 strands winding together, turning in perfect rhythm like dancers in a spiral embrace. The DNA helix shimmers in its microscopic world, twisting and turning with unhurried grace. Each step, each turn, carries instructions for the making of you, for the shape of your hands, the color of your eyes, the cadence of your heartbeat. You might imagine this spiral as a piece of sheet music. Every cell carries a copy of the same composition, 3 billion notes arranged with near-perfect precision. When you breathe, your cells follow the score. When you dream, they hum along. And even as you sleep, the music continues, soft, steady, eternal. There is something tender about this quiet persistence. DNA does not shout. It whispers. It passes its messages not through sound, but through touch, the way one molecule finds another and binds, like fingers interlacing. The A always finds its T. The C always finds its G. Across billions of years, these partnerships have held fast, copying themselves in endless rhythm, one life giving rise to another. You are the latest verse in a song that began long before memory. Each of your cells carries echoes of ancient oceans, where the first living molecules drifted and found one another. They learned to fold, to protect, to copy. That first fragile act of replication, the ability to say, "I will continue," was the moment the song began. Now you carry it effortlessly. You don't think about it as you lie here, but within you, trillions of tiny orchestras are performing the same piece, again and again. Some sing the tune that keeps your heart beating. Others hum the rhythm of growth, repair, and renewal. Some are silent for now, waiting for the right signal, like musicians holding their breath, waiting for their cue. Imagine your body as a vast cathedral of sound, every cell an instrument. In your brain, neurons flicker like strings being plucked, sending shimmering messages of light. In your muscles, proteins fold and unfold in a patient dance, powering each small motion. In your blood, red cells flow like a slow-moving river, carrying the breath of life from one note to the next. The wonder of it all is that none of these players ever saw the score, and yet they perform in perfect harmony. They do not know why they play, only that they must. It is not obedience, but rhythm, the rhythm of being alive. As you listen inward, the boundaries between you and the world begin to blur. You begin to realize that this song beneath your skin is not yours alone. The same melody hums in the leaves outside your window, in the cat curled at your feet, in the microorganisms that drift unseen through the air. All of them follow the same alphabet, the same pattern of pairing and repetition. Life everywhere is one long song written in variation upon a theme. And yet, each arrangement is unique. The difference between you and the tree, between you and the whale, lies only in the verses in which notes repeat and which pause. Small changes in sequence create the vast diversity of form and color, sound and shape. Life composes itself through endless improvisation, layering one rhythm atop another. In your lifetime, your body will copy this code countless times. Every second, millions of cells divide, each one taking with it a near-perfect copy of the score. But no copy is truly flawless. Sometimes, a note shifts, a T becomes a G, a single letter traded, a momentary deviation in an otherwise eternal song. And sometimes that tiny variation becomes the seed of something new, a mutation that may, over millennia, alter the melody itself. Without such imperfections, there would be no evolution, no adaptation, no beauty in difference. Life relies on its own gentle mistakes. It is through these quiet, molecular improvisations that the universe experiments, refining its art form generation after generation. You are not a static masterpiece, but a living composition, still unfolding. When you were born, your cells began reading your DNA like a story already in progress. They knew where to begin, when to pause, how to translate code into color, sound, and touch. They followed instructions shaped by billions of ancestors who came before you. From ancient fish to early mammals to the first humans who looked up at the stars and wondered where they came from. Each of them carried this same spiral, this same alphabet of life. You are their echo, made of the same repeating notes. If you listen closely now, beneath the hum of your breath and the quiet rhythm of your heart, you may feel the vibration of that inheritance. Steady and timeless. Tells you that you belong, that you are part of something unbroken. Science calls it replication, transcription, translation. But you might think of it as memory. Your cells remember the way to become you, the way to heal, the way to continue the song. And when you are gone, your melody will not vanish. It will ripple outward, in the people you touch, the lives you influence, the traces of your code passed forward in countless unseen ways. The music never ends. It only changes key. Now, as your mind drifts toward sleep, you begin to imagine the scale of it all. The way DNA folds within the nucleus, coiled so tightly it could stretch from the earth to the moon if unspooled from all your cells. And yet it fits effortlessly within you, like an entire symphony hidden in a single breath. You realize that this is what it means to be alive, to carry within you a pattern that hums whether you notice or not. To be, in every sense, a vessel for sound, ancient, mathematical, and full of feeling. The music slows. Your breathing deepens. The cells continue their quiet work, rewriting and repairing, weaving the next bar of the endless score. And as you drift closer to sleep, a final thought lingers, soft, half-formed, like the space between two notes. Perhaps every song, even the one within you, was never meant to be heard completely, but simply felt. You close your eyes, and the world tilts inward, smaller, quieter, denser. The vastness of stars fades away, replaced by a realm so compact it could rest on the tip of a pin. You are no longer an observer of galaxies, but of cells, each one a universe of its own. Here, light bends differently. It doesn't travel freely but filters through membranes, bouncing between droplets and threads of living matter. The air feels thicker, as if time itself has slowed to match the heartbeat of the microscopic. You float closer and suddenly you see them, the tiny architects. They are not creatures you can easily imagine. No faces, no eyes, no voices. Yet, their lives are full of purpose, of conversation, of memory. They are bacteria, the first inhabitants of life's long story, writing and rewriting their scripts within the narrow walls of their existence. Each cell hums softly, like a whisper in the dark. They live together, yet apart, connected by invisible exchanges. Molecules pass like secret notes, chemical phrases of warning, defense, or invitation. This is their language, not made of sound, but of shape and sequence. You drift closer, and you begin to see the code that carries their stories. Long spirals of DNA loop and fold within each bacterial cell, shimmering faintly under the soft glow of molecular light. Within these strands lie words, not of speech but of memory. For these architects remember. But how does a being with no brain remember? Their memories are not stored in thought but in sequence, in patterns of nucleotides carved into their DNA. When danger arrives, such as an invading virus, a bacteriophage, it does not simply flee or surrender. Instead, it listens, learns, and records. You watch as one such virus approaches, a shape sharp and geometric, all legs and purpose. It lands on the surface of a bacterial cell, injects its code, and waits for chaos to unfold. For most life forms, this would mean the end. But this cell, this tiny architect, has a secret. Within its genetic code lies a system of defense older than multicellular life itself. It recognizes the intruder's patterns and begins its response, swift and exact. A quiet mechanism stirs, the CRISPR array. You see it now not as a machine, but as a librarian, careful, patient, remembering every story that once threatened it. CRISPR stands for clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, though to this world, names mean little. What matters is the rhythm, repeated sequences that act like bookmarks in the genome. Each repeat holds a fragment of a story, a viral sequence remembered from a past invasion. These fragments are called spacers, tiny memories of encounters survived. The cell copies them carefully, archiving the viral DNA like notes in a quiet notebook. This is not vengeance. It is remembrance. When the same virus, or one like it, dares to return, the cell reads its notebook. It recognizes the pattern and sends forth a precise molecular blade, a protein guided by memory. The most famous of these guides is Cas9, the enzyme that listens and cuts. You watch it work, a microscopic duet of precision and calm intent. Cas9 moves through the cell like a gardener pruning a single branch in an immense forest. Guided by RNA copied from the CRISPR memory, it searches for a perfect match, the sequence that once tried to harm its home. When it finds it, there is no rage, only stillness. A soft snip, and the invader's code falls silent. The cell continues on, unchanged in appearance but stronger in spirit. It has remembered. It has learned. You sense something deeply familiar in this. This ability to store the past and reshape the future feels human too. Memory is not only for thinking minds. It is for all of life. Evolution itself is memory, recorded in the silent script of DNA. The bacteria's notebook becomes the library of life, passed down through generations, refined and rewritten with every encounter. CRISPR is nature's quiet proof that learning does not require consciousness, only continuity. You drift further, imagining how humans, much later, would stumble upon this secret. Scientists would see this molecular dance and realize they could borrow it, use it to read and rewrite the code of life. What began as a bacterial defense became one of humanity's most powerful tools. But here, in this microscopic realm, there is no grandeur or ambition. The bacteria are not inventing technology. They are surviving harmoniously, intelligently, without awareness of the miracles they host. Their simplicity is profound. Adapt, remember, endure. You notice the rhythm of their lives. A virus attacks, the bacteria record. The memory is stored, then shared when the cell divides. Each daughter cell carries the history of its parent, the wisdom of battles fought and survived. Generations pass like ripples in still water, and the notebook grows thicker, filled with the poetry of persistence. Around you, colonies shimmer like constellations. Threads of light DNA weave between them, linking cell to cell in unseen correspondence. It feels like standing within a neural network, though these are not neurons. The resemblance is poetic, not literal. Still, the idea lingers, that intelligence may arise not only in brains, but in the patterns that endure. The bacteria do not sleep, yet their movements feel dreamlike. Each replication, each defense, each encoded spacer, all part of a gentle choreography written billions of years ago. You find yourself breathing slower, as though matching their patient rhythm. In this silence, you understand something about survival. It is not always fierce. Sometimes it is quiet, a record kept, a note written, a pattern remembered. The smallest beings preserve the greatest wisdom, that to endure, one must learn and pass on what was learned. You float back, slowly widening your view. The bacterial world begins to fade, its hum softening into distance. The threads of DNA blur into rivers of light, the shapes of viruses dissolve into mist. You are left with a single thought, that memory, in all its forms, is sacred. It binds the first cell to the last, the smallest to the vast. And as you drift upward toward the next horizon of thought, toward the moment when humans learn to borrow this language, to wield it, you feel a quiet wonder. Somewhere ahead, the story of CRISPR continues, not in the wild, but in the hands of those who learn to listen to bacteria's whispers. You take one last look at the tiny architects and their luminous notebooks, and then you let go, rising gently toward what comes next. You begin not in a laboratory filled with flashing instruments and screens, but in the quiet hum of a single bacterial cell, a world too small to see, yet vast enough to hold memory. Here, life has been surviving for billions of years, fending off invisible invaders that come like ghosts. Viruses called phages. They drift through oceans, soil, and even air, each one carrying the code for destruction. To a bacterium, a phage is both predator and teacher. It arrives with intent, attaching itself like a shadow, injecting its genetic will inside. Some bacteria die, some resist, and some quietly, miraculously learn. They keep fragments of the enemy's code, storing it deep within their own DNA, in small repeating patterns that seem, to the untrained eye, meaningless. These are the repeats, the clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. But for decades, no one knew what they meant. Scientists saw them in genetic maps again and again. Strange sequences that didn't seem to code for anything. The human eye has a way of overlooking patterns that are too subtle, too humble. Like pebbles arranged by a slow tide, they waited for someone to notice the rhythm. In the 1980s, a researcher in Spain, Francisco Mojica, stared at these sequences from salt-loving microbes. They puzzled him. Why would life waste its precious code on repetition? Over the years, as technology advanced and new genomes were sequenced, he began to see the same pattern everywhere, across species, across environments, across time. Something deliberate was at work. And then, a question took root in him, as soft and steady as a heartbeat. Could these sequences be more than decoration? Could they be memory? You imagine him late at night, hunched over a computer, staring at lines of letters that represent life. TCG. Rows upon rows of meaning waiting to be read. Outside, the world slept, unknowing. Inside, one man listened to the whispers of bacteria. He noticed something else. Between the repeating sequences were tiny fragments, each one different, as if collected from strangers. These fragments, he realized, matched the genetic material of viruses. It was as though the bacteria were keeping souvenirs of battles won, a library of foes defeated. A strange beauty lay in that idea. For every infection, a record. For every invasion, a lesson. You can almost hear it, the quiet, microbial storytelling of survival. The repeats themselves acted like bookmarks, organizing this archive of viral memories. When a familiar enemy returned, the bacterium would consult its own DNA, recognize the intruder's pattern, and destroy it with remarkable precision. Life, it turned out, could remember pain not emotionally but molecularly. Mojica named the sequences CRISPR, a term that would later echo through the world of biology, medicine, and ethics. But at first, the world didn't echo back. His papers went largely unread. The discovery was too subtle, too far from the roaring excitement of more glamorous sciences. It was a whisper among storms. Years passed. The pattern persisted, both in genomes and in silence. Then, across the world, other scientists began to notice the same thing. Bacteria with these sequences had strange protein companions, enzymes that worked like tiny scissors. One of them was called Cas9. Cas9 had a gift. It could cut DNA with exquisite accuracy, guided by the very sequences the bacteria had stored. It was as if memory itself had become a tool. Now the story widened from the microscopic to the human scale. Researchers realized that by programming Cas9 with a custom guide, they could direct it to cut any sequence of DNA, not just the viral ones. Humanity, at last, held an instrument of creation and correction, one that could rewrite the code of life with near-perfect precision. But before the headlines, before the Nobel Prizes, before the debates about ethics and design, there was only curiosity, the slow, patient kind. The kind that listens. You pause here, thinking of how discovery often begins not with brilliance, but with attention. The bacterial world had carried this secret for eons, waiting for someone to look closely enough. It reminds you that nature hides its deepest truths in plain sight, wrapped not in grandeur but in quiet repetition. You picture DNA as a woven fabric, threads looping around each other like the breath of a song. In that weave, bacteria stitched in tiny notes. Remember this one, protect yourself from that one, keep this memory alive. The pattern looked meaningless, but meaning is sometimes a matter of perspective. The moment Mojica connected the dots, the world subtly changed, even if it didn't yet know it. He wasn't thinking of genetic engineering or designer cures. He was simply following wonder, the same wonder that drives all great science. Why is this here? What does it do? And somewhere inside that question, a quiet revolution was already unfolding. The bacteria, the viruses, the enzymes, all part of a grander conversation about life defending itself, learning from harm, and turning memory into power. In the end, that is what CRISPR truly is. Not just a tool for humans, but a story of nature's resilience. You find something comforting in that thought, that even the smallest forms of life carry within them a kind of wisdom. They do not forget what has tried to harm them. They adapt, not with vengeance, but with remembrance. Perhaps you think there's a lesson there for us too. To remember, not to dwell. To adapt, not to harden. To see the patterns hidden in the noise and realize they were never random at all. Outside the bacterial cell, the night deepens. The world still hums with countless invisible battles, each one etching a new memory into the living code. The story is still being written molecule by molecule. And as you drift closer to sleep, you sense that what we call discovery is rarely about finding something new. It is about noticing what has been there all along, waiting for us to slow down enough to see it. Because sometimes, the universe hides its greatest inventions not in the stars above, but in the tiniest repetitions of life itself. And somewhere, those patterns begin to whisper again, softly leading you toward the next chapter. The one where memory becomes mastery, where nature's archive becomes humanity's tool. You rest within the quiet hum of existence. A world too small for eyes, too perfect to be chaotic, too intricate to be accidental. Inside every cell of your body, there lies a code, not a metaphorical one, but an alphabet, written in the chemical symbols of life. T, C, and G. For letters, repeating in endless permutations, creating the library from which every living thing has been written. It is both your autobiography and your inheritance, a text that began long before you and will continue long after. Now imagine holding a tool so delicate it can touch that alphabet, not to destroy it but to shape it. This tool is Cas9, a molecule that behaves like a calm and patient sculptor. Guided by RNA, a small strand of language that knows exactly where to go, it searches for a sequence that matches its own whispered pattern. And when it finds it, Cas9 pauses as if asking for permission, then makes a single, perfect cut. It's hard to imagine such precision on this scale. You picture it as a dance. Cas9 gliding through the nucleus, brushing gently against the DNA's spiraling ladder. The double helix twists like a slow ribbon underwater, its two strands held together by invisible bonds. The molecule moves closer, sensing the sequence that matches the RNA's call. Then a soft click, almost imperceptible. One bond breaks. The code opens. In that instant, the cell becomes both vulnerable and full of possibility. Because now, with that single cut, the story can change. The cell's repair machinery rushes to mend the break. Not out of fear, but instinct. And as it repairs, new instructions can be written, like editing a single word in a vast book. A misspelling corrected, a mutation healed, possibility introduced. You imagine this happening not just in one cell but across millions, in plants, in animals, in human embryos, even in the air's invisible life forms. Each with its own story, each with a potential shift waiting to be written. The power feels immense, almost mythic. Yet within it lies a quiet humility, because this isn't the act of creation from nothing. It's conversation, collaboration, a partnership between human understanding and the molecules that have written life since its dawn. Cas9 itself came from bacteria, ancient survivors who learned to defend themselves by remembering. When a virus invaded, the bacteria captured a fragment of its genetic code and stored it like a scar. The next time the invader returned, Cas9 would use that memory, guided by the RNA record, to seek and destroy. It's a biological memory system, a defense that became a gift. What began as survival evolved into a tool for design. And isn't that the story of science itself? Discovery not as conquest, but as listening, as learning from what life already knows. You think of scientists watching through microscopes, the glow of fluorescent proteins tracing the dance of Cas9 within a living cell. Each dot of light is a story unfolding, a letter being turned, a future being rewritten. You close your eyes and imagine you could shrink down, small enough to see this process unfold firsthand. You drift through the cytoplasm like floating in a warm current. Everything is motion, proteins folding, enzymes binding, vesicles drifting like tiny moons. Then, before you, the DNA, a galaxy within a nucleus. Long strands curling upon themselves, a shimmering double helix glowing faintly in the dimness. You see Cas9 approach, a shape like open hands, ready to clasp, ready to mend. The RNA within it hums a single melody, a sequence of notes that will match the DNA's rhythm. The moment the tune aligns, Cas9 stops. The scissors close. A brief flash, and the strand opens like a curtain. Silence follows, the kind of silence that comes before change. And as you watch, the cell begins to heal. Enzymes arrive, reading the open ends, deciding what to do. Some choose to stitch the break exactly as it was, a memory of repair. Others insert something new, a correction or a subtle shift. The cell accepts this gracefully, because life has always been about adaptation, not resistance. This is editing not as violence, but as care. Not cutting to harm, but cutting to heal. A small act of rewriting that echoes through generations. You think of how this power has already begun to shape our world. Scientists using CRISPR-Cas9 to fix genetic disorders, to create disease-resistant crops, to restore vision, to imagine cures once thought impossible. Yet there is also caution, a necessary slowness. Because when one edits the language of life, one must also respect the story being told. In this moment of reflection, you feel the weight of that balance. Every cut is a choice. Every edit, a question of what should be changed and what should remain untouched. For the genome is not just a map of function, but a map of history. Every mutation, every repeat, every silent sequence carries the memory of evolution's long experiment. And so, as you drift in this inner landscape, you realize that Cas9's true gift is not control. It is awareness. It shows you that even the smallest molecule can carry intent, can act with precision born of understanding. It reminds you that change, when done with care, can be a form of compassion. You imagine now the genome as a vast forest. Each tree is a gene, each branch a variation. Cas9 walks gently through, trimming, shaping, pruning the branches that block the light, allowing others to grow stronger. You hear the whisper of leaves, the soft rhythm of the molecular shears, the hum of cellular breath. The forest breathes more freely, feels alive, alert, balanced. Science, too, breathes this way, growing toward light, guided by curiosity. And yet always, there must be stillness between each discovery, a pause between each cut, a silence that lets the meaning settle. Because at its heart, the genome is a story not written by us, but shared with us. We are its readers, its caretakers, its co-authors. To hold Cas9 is to hold the potential of revision, but also the humility to ask, should we? You sense that question lingering like a breeze through the cell. The answer is not certain. Shouldn't be. Uncertainty is the pulse of wisdom. To live with it, to wonder within it, is what keeps knowledge soft and awake. And perhaps that's the real beauty of this molecular tool. Not its sharpness, but its grace. The way it moves without haste. The way it teaches patience through precision. The way it makes you realize that even at the smallest scales, life edits itself endlessly, learning from every repair, growing through every imperfection. You breathe in slowly. You imagine Cas9 at work, far beneath your awareness, a guardian of possibility. And for a moment, you feel connected to every cell that has ever existed. All of them bound by the same alphabet, all of them written in the same soft code of a T, C, and G. The scissors of life continue their quiet work, not erasing, but refining, one line at a time. And as the cell's hum fades into stillness, another question begins to rise, not about cutting, but about what comes after. When the letters of life can be rewritten, what does it mean to be the author of your own design? The thought drifts, like a signal waiting to be read, and carries you gently toward the next chapter. You are floating in a quiet sea of light, the light of information, woven through every living thing. Each ripple is a story, each shimmer a word, each cell a sentence that has been writing itself for billions of years. For most of your life, you have known editing as something sharp, the snip of scissors, the decisive cut. But now, you are learning that there is another way to edit. Not by cutting, but by rewriting softly. This is the story of gentle revision. You imagine the genome as a book, 4 letters repeating like a sacred mantra. T, C, and G. Within that alphabet, all the poems of life are written, from the curve of a leaf to the rhythm of your heartbeat. For a long time, scientists tried to change those poems with blunt tools. They cut and waited for the cell to heal itself, hoping the repair would tell a better story. It was powerful, yes, but also imperfect, a bit like carving a sentence with a knife. Now, there are gentler editors at work. They do not slice the page. They pick up the pen. Base editors and prime editors, quiet artisans of the genome, step into the story with care. Instead of breaking the DNA's spiral thread, they touch a single letter and shift it, like a poet choosing a softer word. A C becomes a T. A G becomes an A. Small, deliberate, and astonishingly precise. A single syllable in the song of life, changed without breaking the melody. You feel a strange tenderness imagining this. A molecule reaching into another molecule and making a correction as light as a breath. No wound, no tear, no alarm bell of repair. Just intention written carefully into the spiral. The cell doesn't panic. It simply accepts the new word, as though it had always been there. It reminds you of a moment in writing, that pause when your pen hovers, knowing that changing one word could change the feeling of an entire page. Science has a word for this care. They call it fidelity, the faithfulness of the edit to the original meaning. It is not about power. It is about precision. And as you learn about it, something inside you relaxes. Because you see that even in biology, gentleness is a form of intelligence. Base editing began, like many breakthroughs, with a small question. Could we fix a single letter without breaking the chain? For decades, geneticists used CRISPR, the sharp editor, to cut DNA and let the cell repair it. But the repairs were sometimes messy, like scabs on a manuscript. Base editors changed that. They carry enzymes that can rewrite just one base at a time, a chemical pencil that quietly swaps one character for another. No double-strand breaks, no scars, just a cleaner correction. Then came prime editing, a more sophisticated scribe. Where base editing swaps letters, prime editing can rewrite short phrases, even sentences, within the code. It's like using a gentle spell checker that doesn't just correct but rephrases with intention. A section of DNA is opened softly, rewritten with new instructions, and closed again almost seamlessly. In laboratories around the world, scientists watch as this new precision changes the possibilities of medicine. Sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, Tay-Sachs, names that once felt like immutable tragedies, now have the faint glow of rewrite in their future. You can almost hear it, if you listen closely enough. The whisper of correction. The DNA unspooling like silk, the quiet exchange of letters, the satisfaction of balance restored. It's not a violent process, not the spectacle of transformation, but a restoration, a kind of biological editing that feels more like forgiveness than force. The beauty of it lies in restraint. Each base edit must be chosen carefully, because every letter in DNA holds the potential to ripple outward into the vast orchestra of a living body. Change too much and the melody falters. Change too little and the discord remains. And so, the scientist becomes a kind of poet, patient, reflective, and humble before the complexity of the text. You find yourself thinking about your own life. The times you wish to rewrite something, a sentence you spoke too sharply, a choice that left a mark. You can't cut those moments away, but perhaps you can revise them. Not through force, but through gentleness. You can't undo the past, but you can change its meaning in the present. You can rewrite how it lives inside you. That is what base editing teaches you, that repair doesn't have to begin with destruction. That healing can start with subtlety. That sometimes the best edits are invisible. In one experiment, scientists use base editing to change a single letter that causes a deadly blood disorder. They don't cut the DNA. They don't break its spiral. They simply rewrite one base, turning a word of suffering into one of health. And the cell begins to make normal blood again, as though it had always known how. When you hear that, you feel a quiet awe, the kind that hums behind your ribs. Because in that moment, science isn't just solving problems. It's telling a better story. It is the same story that runs through evolution itself, the story of gradual, graceful change. For billions of years, DNA has been rewriting itself, through tiny mutations, through errors that became innovations. Base editing doesn't disrupt that history. It joins it, guiding it with purpose. It's as if humans have learned to collaborate with evolution, to write in harmony with the text instead of scratching over it. You imagine this collaboration spreading gently through the world. No more violent editing, no more fear of broken strands, just quiet correction, quiet care. It makes you wonder if this, too, could be a philosophy beyond science, a way of living. Perhaps relationships could be edited this way. Perhaps ideas, societies, and even the way we treat the earth could be rewritten softly, with patience instead of pressure. Maybe the secret of life's resilience lies not in its ability to cut and rebuild, but in its willingness to change without breaking. You drift back to the image of the spiral, DNA's double helix glowing softly against the darkness of space. Each twist a paragraph, each loop a line of continuity between all beings. In its curves, you can almost see the shape of compassion, the care that holds everything together even as it changes. You feel the rhythm of your own heartbeat syncing with that double rhythm, two strands pulsing as one. Edit, rest. Edit, rest. The gentle music of improvement without violence. And as you rest in that thought, you realize how deeply human this desire is, not just to know but to nurture. Science, at its most beautiful, is not about control but connection. When we learn to rewrite without breaking, we become participants in the poetry of existence. We learn that life, like language, wants to be understood, not dominated. And we learn that every cell, like every story, deserves to be treated with care. Outside the lab, the night stretches quiet and wide. The stars above you seem to pulse with the same rhythm as the DNA below. Editing, always editing, without fracture. You close your eyes, and the lines between biology and being blur softly. Everything feels writable, but nothing feels urgent. Just slow, mindful revision. A promise that even the oldest stories can change, letter by letter. And as you drift further into stillness, you hear the next question rising, gentle and luminous, waiting at the edge of thought. If we can rewrite life itself so carefully, then what, exactly, is the meaning of the code we are changing? You rest in the stillness of a hospital corridor. Soft footsteps echo. Distant monitors pulse like a metronome for the heart. The air carries a quiet mix of antiseptic and hope. It is here, in the delicate hum of machines and murmured prayers, that the dream of healing takes shape. You close your eyes, and time becomes slow, almost liquid. You drift into the gentle pulse of science, the rhythm of discovery that never fully sleeps. In this space between night and light, you begin to hear a different kind of story. It is not told in words, but in molecules. Each cell carries its own script, written in the four-letter alphabet of life, A, T, C, G. A silent song, repeating through generations, unchanged yet evolving. For centuries, humanity could only listen, unable to edit, unable to correct the slips of chance that wrote illness into the text. But now the ink has softened. The pen has changed hands. CRISPR, a name that sounds almost tender, like a whisper of wind through leaves, begins as something small, something bacterial. In the vast ancient ocean of time, bacteria learned a kind of memory. They found a way to store the fingerprints of their viral enemies, to recognize them if they returned. This system, a natural defense, became a tool, a molecular scalpel, delicate and precise. You imagine it now, not as machinery, but as choreography. A dance of recognition and repair. A piece of RNA, a fragile thread, guides an enzyme named Cas9 to its destination. It searches the genome like a reader scanning a page for a single word. When it finds it, it pauses, then cuts. A clean, precise incision in the double helix. A moment of silence in the story. Then, guided by the cell's own machinery, a correction is written. A new sequence replaces the old. A letter is rewritten, and with it, a fate begins to shift. You think of the children whose lives hang in the balance of a single misplaced gene, a single note in an otherwise perfect melody. A girl born with sickle cell disease, whose blood cells bend like tiny crescent moons, trapping oxygen, trapping hope. You imagine her now, sleeping under a quilt patterned like constellations, her body learning to breathe freely for the first time after a CRISPR treatment. You picture her mother sitting nearby, afraid to believe, but unable to stop smiling. Healing, you realize, is not only about the body. It is about time, the rewriting of what once seemed unchangeable. It is about giving the future back to those who had already learned to live without it. The scientists working in their quiet labs do not see miracles. They see patterns. They watch fluorescent cells glow under microscopes and whisper to themselves, "It worked." They are the new storytellers, editing the language of life with reverence and restraint. Still, the question hums softly beneath the hope. How far can we go? Every cut, every edit, carries both promise and uncertainty. The genome is not just a sequence, it is a symphony. To change one note might heal a dissonance, or it might shift a harmony unseen. You think of evolution as a sculptor, slow and deliberate. Now, humanity has taken up the chisel. The responsibility feels both thrilling and heavy, like holding light in your hands. You picture DNA not as data, but as a river. For millions of years, it has flowed unbroken, carrying the sediment of ancestry, memory, instinct. CRISPR is a dam that can redirect the flow, guiding it toward new channels. You see scientists wading gently into that current, cautious not to muddy its clarity. They speak in careful tones, balancing possibility and humility. Each discovery is followed by silence, a pause to ask, "Should we?" In the quiet of your own thoughts, you wonder about healing beyond the biological. If CRISPR can mend genes, what mends sorrow? What edits the pain that runs through families who have watched illness move from parent to child like an unwanted heirloom? Science offers tools, but hope offers breath. Healing, you feel, is a tapestry. One thread molecular, one emotional, one spiritual, all woven together by the hands of patience. There are places in the world where CRISPR trials are already underway. You imagine walking through a lab late at night, soft lights glowing over glass dishes, small colonies of cells dividing like stars forming in miniature galaxies. The researchers move slowly, deliberately, speaking in low voices so as not to disturb the fragile beginnings of something that might change everything. The hum of the incubator is like a lullaby, a heartbeat of progress. Outside, the world turns quietly. Somewhere, a father checks his child's breathing, listening for peace in each exhale. Somewhere else, a young scientist sits by a window, wondering if her work will ever touch a life. Somewhere, in the liminal space between fear and faith, the dream of healing keeps unfolding. You trace your own breath, in, out, and realize that life itself is a pattern of repair. Every heartbeat is a correction, every exhale a release. Your body is a self-healing system, constantly rewriting its own script. Tiny enzymes patrol your DNA even now, mending small errors, cutting and stitching in silence. CRISPR, in many ways, is just an echo of that ancient wisdom, a mirror of what life already knows how to do. You picture a future where gene editing is as gentle as tending a garden. Scientists become gardeners of the genome, pruning only what must be pruned, nurturing what must grow. The world becomes a landscape of care, where technology and tenderness coexist. Yet even in this vision, there remains a whisper of humility, the reminder that not every imperfection must be erased. Some flaws are the very texture of being alive. Perhaps the dream of healing is not about perfection, but about participation, joining in the long, slow song of repair that life has always sung. You imagine a time when children born with once untreatable conditions can run, laugh, breathe easily. When genetic legacies of pain fade quietly into memory. The future, then, feels like a soft dawn, light spreading across fields that once knew only shadow. And yet, you feel another question forming at the edges of thought. If we can edit life, can we also edit who we are? Where does healing end, and enhancement begin. In the silence that follows, you realize this is not a question to answer tonight. It belongs to the next dream, the next unfolding of wonder and care. You exhale slowly, as if releasing centuries of waiting. The hospital corridor fades, replaced by the deep calm of a sleeping world. Somewhere, genes rewrite their stories. Somewhere, hope takes root. You listen to the soft hum of the earth itself, pulsing with quiet intention. The dream of healing is not a single discovery. It is a lifelong lullaby, echoing through every cell, every heart, every tomorrow. You let yourself drift toward that quiet horizon. Not an ending, but an opening. The air feels lighter now, the night softer. In the stillness, you hear the next question rise, almost like a breath. If life can be rewritten, what other stories might we learn to tell? You walk through a garden that hums with quiet life. Leaves shimmer faintly, touched by moonlight, or perhaps by something else. Their glow is gentle, as if the plants themselves remember the stars they once evolved under. The air is calm, cool, filled with a scent that feels both ancient and new. You take a slow breath, and in that stillness, you begin to see what humanity has planted here. Not with soil and seed, but with code and intention. This is the garden of possibility. Here, life is rewritten with a steady hand and a curious heart. The letters are not ink, but nucleotides at T, C, and G, the script that nature has whispered for billions of years. You realize that this story was never silent. It has always been telling itself one cell at a time. But now, for the first time, you can speak back. CRISPR. The strange, sharp name softens when you understand what it means. A molecular scalpel, a memory of ancient battles between bacteria and viruses, now turned into a tool of creation. It is not magic, though it feels like it. It is precision born from evolution's patient chaos. You imagine a scientist leaning close to a droplet beneath a microscope, watching as a single protein finds its mark, cutting and mending a thread of DNA, changing destiny with a motion so small it's almost invisible. You walk deeper into the garden, and the paths split into wonders. On one side, plants glow softly without the sun, their light a gift from the deep sea. In another corner, mosquitoes are born without the ability to carry disease, small, winged promises against human suffering. You touch a petal, its texture like silk, and wonder if this too was rewritten. A color shifted, a scent reimagined. Every leaf, every creature, a sentence edited in the great biological novel. And yet, beneath the awe, there is a hush. You sense it in the soil, the whisper of hesitation, the breath before a question. Nature has always been a balance between creation and restraint. Evolution experiments slowly, letting time decide which possibilities endure. But humans move faster now, skipping the waiting, writing new endings before the old stories are done. You pause by a small pond. Its surface is still, reflecting your face and the luminous trees beyond it. You think of the double helix, two spiraling arms of life, and how easily the balance between them could tilt. The beauty of CRISPR lies in its precision, but the weight of that precision lies in choice. You can remove a disease from a bloodline or alter a trait forever. You can save a species or erase one. Each act ripples outward like the circles spreading from a single drop of water. The frogs in the pond sing softly, their rhythm unbroken by your thoughts. You wonder, when did creation become a conversation? Perhaps it always was. Nature wrote the first lines, and now you reply, carefully, reverently, knowing the words might echo far into the future. You recall stories of golden rice, made to nourish the hungry, of pigs whose organs may one day save human lives. Each one a story of hope written with molecular ink. Yet beside them are the stories of hubris, of choices made too quickly, of ecosystems bent under unintended weight. You kneel to touch the ground. Feels warm. You think about the billions of tiny changes already happening inside you. Mutations, repairs, quiet miracles that have always been part of living. Life edits itself constantly, guided by chance and need. CRISPR, in its essence, is a continuation of that story, a way to guide evolution's pen instead of leaving it to time. The question, then, is not whether it should be used but how softly we write. A breeze moves through the glowing leaves, and you imagine the world decades from now. Fields of drought-resistant crops swaying under a sky free of hunger. Children born without the shadow of genetic disease. Coral reefs reborn with new resilience, their colors bright again beneath the sea. You see possibility vast, shimmering, kind. Yet you also see uncertainty. What happens when the boundaries blur between healing and enhancing, between helping and reshaping? You remember how every garden needs a gardener, and a sense of when to stop pruning. Too much intervention and the balance falters. Too little, and the weeds of fear take over. The garden of possibility thrives only when tended with humility. You picture generations of scientists, each passing down both tools and caution, teaching not just how to change life but how to listen to it. The pulse of ethics runs alongside the pulse of discovery. You feel both in your chest. As you walk, night deepens, and the glow of the plants feels like constellations underfoot. You realize that the story of CRISPR is not just about biology, it is about stewardship. The ability to alter life is also the invitation to understand it more deeply. You are not separate from the code you study. You are written in it, by it, through it. Every cell in your body is a poem written by evolution's patient hand. To edit the genome is to touch that poem, to whisper into the lines that define you. You find a small gate at the end of the path. Beyond it lies darkness, unlit and uncharted. Perhaps this is where new questions wait, questions about identity, about the essence of what it means to be human. If genes can be rewritten, what remains untouched? Is the soul, if it exists, encoded, or does it float beyond all sequences, all symbols, all symmetry? You listen, and the garden seems to hold its breath. In this silence, possibility feels both infinite and fragile, like the first breath of a newborn species, or the pause before a new discovery. You understand now that the gift of CRISPR is not control but conversation, a dialogue between curiosity and care, between what is and what could be. The stars above mirror the bioluminescent leaves below, and you sense the symmetry of it all. The cosmos and the cell, both written in patterns of repetition and chance. You feel the quiet connection between them, the thread that binds light and life, question and answer. And as you step toward the dark horizon, you carry one thought like a seed. That progress, to be true, must grow in balance with wisdom. The garden fades behind you, its glow softening like the last ember of a dream. And somewhere ahead, unseen but waiting, lies the next question. One that hums not of what we can change, but of what we choose to understand. You lie beneath a wide, unblinking sky, and the night feels almost aware, as though it, too, is watching humanity take its next careful steps. The stars above are ancient observers, older than ethics, older than thought itself. Their light, crossing billions of years, falls upon a world where living beings have learned to rewrite the code of their own existence. You breathe in slowly. Each breath feels like a question. Each exhale, a quiet attempt at understanding. Once, nature's script was untouchable. Life wrote itself through slow, patient time, mutations, selections, symmetries of chance. But now, the pens have passed into human hands. We can move letters in the genome like notes in a song, change the rhythm of cells, and soften or sharpen what it means to be alive. This power, this shimmering tool, rests delicately in the cradle of human intention. It is a power that hums with both hope and unease. You picture a scientist in a silent lab, surrounded by glass and light. Their movements are slow, reverent almost, as though handling something sacred. Inside a clear dish, invisible threads of DNA glimmer under the microscope's gaze. To some, these threads are just chemistry. To others, they are poetry, lines of a cosmic poem that life itself has written. And now we are learning to edit the verses. The scientist breathes, steady and aware. A small change here could silence a disease. Another could alter the color of eyes, or the fate of a species. There is no malice in the act, no clear boundary either. The tools do not know right or wrong. Only hands and hearts can decide that. You drift deeper into thought. The edges of ethics are not sharp lines. They are gradients, like dusk turning into night. One moment it feels right to heal. The next it feels dangerous to redesign. Between those two feelings lies a trembling space. The space where wisdom must learn to whisper louder than ambition. The philosopher's voice hums softly in the dark of your mind. Should we, simply because we can? This question, like an echo, travels across time. It moves through classrooms and conference halls, through whispered debates and sleepless nights. It moves through you, because ethics is not something outside you, it is something you breathe. You remember a story once told, of a child born free from a genetic illness that had haunted generations. The joy was profound, a miracle crafted by care and science. But somewhere else, another child was designed not for healing, but for preference, height, color, intelligence. The same tools, the same act of editing, and yet the moral weight felt different. Ethics, you realize, is not about the tool but about the story we choose to tell with it. The night deepens. Crickets murmur their slow rhythm, and the thought drifts to the origin of life. A billion-year experiment with no blueprint, no manual. For eons, nature has been editing blindly, each mutation a silent vote for survival. Humanity, however, edits with purpose. But purpose alone is not wisdom. You imagine standing beside a river of choices. Each drop flows toward the future, carrying decisions that ripple far beyond the present. The question is not whether the river should flow, it always will, but how gently we choose to touch its surface. You picture a future laboratory again, but this time the walls dissolve into scenes of possibility. One shows fields free of hunger, crops strong against drought, their leaves shimmering with promise. Another shows a forest restored by edited trees that pull carbon from the air. And beside these, a quieter vision. Rows of identical faces, a world too perfect to feel real. You linger between them, your mind wandering through what-ifs and what-shoulds. Each vision glows softly, like fireflies in a moral twilight. You feel the tension, that subtle hum where science and soul meet. It is not an argument but a balance. To hold both wonder and caution in the same breath is the essence of being human. Somewhere, deep in your memory, you recall how ethics once guided smaller tools. The fire that could warm or burn, the atom that could light cities or silence them. Each discovery tested our reflection more than our intellect. And each time, humanity learned, slowly, imperfectly, that knowledge is not light unless it is held with care. You turn this thought gently, like a stone in your hand. Feels both smooth and heavy. In the distance, you hear the low hum of the Earth's living systems, invisible, intricate, endlessly intertwined. Every heartbeat, every leaf, every microbe hums in quiet coordination. To edit one thread is to touch the entire web. And so, you think ethics is not just a rule book. It is a form of listening. Listening to the quiet voices of consequence, of compassion, of humility. A soft breeze passes, and you imagine ethics as a sound. A low resonance that hums beneath every discovery. When ignored, it becomes dissonance. When attended to, it harmonizes progress with purpose. You recall how, in music, silence gives shape to sound. In science, restraint gives meaning to power. And maybe the truest wisdom is not found in how much we can change, but in knowing when to stop changing. Your mind wanders to the people who hold these choices in their hands. Scientists, leaders, dreamers, each carrying a small fragment of the future. You imagine them pausing before a decision, taking one deep breath, feeling the quiet pulse of what their work could mean. Perhaps that moment of stillness, that hesitation before the act, is where ethics truly lives. You close your eyes and listen. The world hums with creation, endless and unstoppable. The oceans rewrite their currents. The forests adjust to changing air. Life is always editing itself. But only humanity asks whether it should. This is our echo, the soft moral sound that follows every discovery, asking not for guilt but for grace. The stars above you shimmer again, patient witnesses. They have seen countless civilizations rise, wonder, and fade. Yet the act of questioning, the act of care, may be what keeps a species alive longer than its inventions. The night grows even quieter now, and you imagine those moral echoes floating outward, gentle ripples across time. They touch generations yet unborn, reminding them not of the limits of progress, but of its soul. You breathe once more, steady and slow. In the hush, a realization takes root. The ability to change life is not a crown, but a responsibility. To edit life is to edit the future, and the future listens carefully. Your thoughts soften. You picture all of humanity as a single living organism, hands trembling around a shared flame. The light is beautiful but fragile, and maybe that is the point, that power should never feel entirely comfortable. In your mind, the flame flickers and becomes a seed, glowing softly, waiting to be planted wisely. You wonder what kind of garden it might grow into, and as you drift closer to sleep, one last thought rises like a tide. Perhaps ethics is not an answer, but an ongoing conversation between love and knowledge. You let that thought settle. You let it breathe. The world, you realize, does not need certainty tonight, only care. The air feels lighter now, filled with invisible whispers of possibility. Somewhere beyond the edge of thought, the next question is already forming, quiet and luminous. If we can shape life, can we also learn to shape consciousness itself? And that question, soft, infinite, carries you gently toward the next chapter. You lie still beneath the quiet breath of night, and in that silence, you feel the slow rhythm of time, the pulse of countless generations moving through you. Every cell in your body is an echo of something ancient, shaped by trial and error, by storms survived and stars watched. Evolution has always been a sculptor working blindfolded, feeling, testing, breaking, mending, letting the chisel of time find its own form. For billions of years, life wrote its story in the dark, guided only by chance and persistence. Tiny mutations flickered like whispers in the code of DNA, most fading into nothing, a few catching hold like sparks in dry grass. Each success was an accident refined by repetition, a slow dance between chaos and survival. You are here because of that patience, the unhurried artistry of nature finding what works again and again. Now, though the rhythm changes, you can feel it, can't you? Humanity has begun to listen to the whisper beneath the whisper, the language of genes, the alphabet of life. Where once the wind sculpted the dunes, now hands shape the sand directly. With the tools of understanding, we trace the threads of heredity, the way traits twist and flow like rivers through generations. And with that knowledge, a new possibility arises. What if we could steer the current? You imagine a scientist bent over a microscope, her breath fogging the glass as she watches cells divide like tiny universes. CRISPR, she calls it, a way to edit the code of life itself. The name sounds sharp, but the act feels delicate, almost reverent. A single letter in the vast manuscript of DNA. Changed, replaced, rewritten. It is both awe-inspiring and humbling. To hold a sentence that took billions of years to compose, and dare to shift a word. You breathe deeply, aware of the tension in that gesture. For every promise of healing, the possibility of erasing disease, of restoring sight, of mending hearts at their root. There is also a question lingering in the dark. How much of life should we shape, and how much should we let be? The night seems to ask you that softly. Is control the same as care? Is perfection the same as love? Evolution, after all, is not just about progress. It is about relationship. Every adaptation, every form is a response to heat, to hunger, to the presence of others. The wing is born from the need to reach, the root from the need to hold. Life invents itself through dialogue, not domination. Even when we guide it, we are still participants in that ancient conversation. You think of coral, how it builds cities from bone and light, how its color fades when the ocean warms. A single degree too high, and the conversation breaks. The coral does not rage. It simply withdraws, pale and silent, reminding us that power without listening is collapse. To rewrite evolution is not to command it. It is to learn its language more deeply, to ask permission with every change. In your mind's eye, you walk through a garden that stretches across centuries. Some flowers bloom because we have taught them to, their petals shaped by patient hands. Others bloom wild, unbidden. Reminders that beauty often comes from what we did not expect. The garden is not separate from the gardener. Each learns from the other. So too with evolution, we are both its students and its stewards. The future may bring wings where there were none, resilience where fragility once reigned. Perhaps humanity will learn to grow organs anew, to live longer, to live gentler. But the deeper question hums beneath these dreams. Will we remember to evolve our empathy alongside our power? Will our wisdom keep pace with our reach? You sit with that thought, how knowledge is both seed and shadow. The more we learn, the more we must listen. The more we shape, the more we must yield. The whisper of evolution has always been soft. Perhaps it must stay that way even now. It moves not with command, but with care. A balancing of voices, a weaving of intentions. Somewhere in the depths of the ocean, bacteria still trade genes like quiet gifts. In the branches above, birds still refine their songs generation by generation, not through design, but through the small miracles of attraction and chance. The world continues to evolve in ways no hand could ever script. And maybe that's the point, that we are not separate from the great unfolding, but part of its rhythm, its dreaming. You breathe again, feeling the lineage of life stretch behind and before you, from the first cells that divided in warm tidal pools to the beings yet to come, who may look back on us as ancient ancestors. What will they inherit from our choices? What kind of silence will they listen to when they wonder how they came to be? Perhaps evolution is not a ladder, but a spiral, looping, revisiting, learning through return. Each generation adds a turn, a new shape to the same melody. You are one note in that song, brief but resonant. And as you listen to its hum, you sense that the music continues long after you fade, expanding, reinterpreting, remembering. In the hush of night, you realize, guiding evolution is not about control. It is about harmony, about learning how to breathe with the world, rather than over it. Nature is not an instrument to play, but a partner to dance with step by step, through time. You close your eyes, feeling that dance continue. Within your blood, your breath, your mind. The pulse of life moves onward, whispering in every atom. Change, but listen. Shape, but care. And somewhere, at the edge of that whisper, another question begins to form, not about how life changes, but about why it continues to. A question waiting quietly in the dark, leading you toward the next unfolding thought. You stand at the edge of tomorrow, not as a visitor, but as part of its quiet unfolding. Around you, the night hums with unseen frequencies. The gentle vibration of photons, the pulse of electrons moving in lattices of thought and silicon. The future is not a distant place. It is written now, in the slow rhythm of your breathing and the shimmering dance of light around you. Every heartbeat, every neuron, is a flicker of the possible. A pattern of brightness that will one day become memory, invention, discovery. Light has always been our first teacher. It shows us what is real, what can be seen, and what must be imagined. It carries the whispers of stars billions of years old, folded into waves that reach your eyes tonight. When you look into the night sky, you are reading an ancient library, a library still being written, word by radiant word. The ink is time, the paper, the endless dark. Each photon is a messenger, carrying with it both history and prophecy. In the language of science, light is both particle and wave. But in the language of wonder, it is the mind of the universe thinking aloud. It moves without rest, translating energy into meaning. We harness it now, bending it through glass and fiber, encoding our voices and stories within it. Fiber optic cables thread beneath oceans and continents, carrying your words, your love, your dreams, all as pulses of light. What once streamed only between stars now streams between hearts. The future, it seems, is illuminated not by what we invent, but by what we remember to see. Every scientific discovery is not a conquest, but a moment of remembrance, a sudden recall of what the universe has always known. When you look at DNA through the lens of a microscope, you are looking at the written light of life. Each molecule spirals like a cosmic poem, a script authored by billions of years of starlight and chemistry. The phosphorescent glow of your cells is an echo of that first sunrise, the universe awakening inside itself. The more we study light, the more it begins to resemble consciousness itself. It reveals and conceals, speeds toward infinity yet bends to gravity, behaves like a thought moving through the medium of space. It refuses to be pinned down like awareness, like time. Perhaps that is why we find comfort in it. It moves the way we think. Fluid, nonlinear, radiant. The future written in light is not only technological. It is emotional, spiritual, biological. In laboratories, light is being shaped into tools that might one day heal. Laser pulses repair tissue with precision that once belonged only to dreams. Quantum computers whisper at the edge of comprehension, using light to think faster than any brain can. Photosynthetic cells are being redesigned to store sunlight in new ways, so that the warmth of the day can linger deep into the night. Yet all these futures begin with the simplest truth. Light listens. It responds to what it touches. It changes when observed. In physics, this is called the observer effect, the quiet revolution that reveals that reality itself is participatory. You are not separate from what you see. The act of seeing changes the scene. The photon that strikes your eye is absorbed, transformed, translated into perception. And in that moment, the universe witnesses itself. So, when you imagine the future, know that you are not just dreaming it. You are helping to build it, photon by photon. Every act of curiosity, every moment of tenderness, every quiet observation adds a thread to the luminous web of what's to come. The scientist and the poet are not so different. Both learn to listen to light in their own language. One measures its wavelength. The other measures its wonder. Both find that the truth cannot be separated from beauty. There will come a time when light itself will write our messages, not just as symbols on screens, but as structures of living code. Bioluminescent organisms already compose the first drafts. Jellyfish glowing like lanterns in the sea, fireflies sending coded pulses through summer air. The universe is experimenting, as it always does. Perhaps one day, our own skin or cells will carry luminous inscriptions, living light that responds to thought, emotion, or song. But even then, the real miracle will not be in what light can do, but in what it has always been, a bridge. Between atoms and awareness, between stars and eyes, between what is and what could be. You are a continuation of that bridge, the universe making itself visible through your perception. Imagine now, the galaxies that shimmer beyond sight, the nebulae where light is still being born. The dust that once floated aimlessly becomes the seed of new suns. Time folds around these stars like silk, and from their eventual death, heavier elements spill into space. Carbon, oxygen, iron, the alphabet of life. You too are written from this alphabet. You are the universe's self-reflecting text. Light may one day fade, physicists say. In the deep future, long after all stars have burned out, there will be only blackness, a cosmic quiet so complete it can only be described as sleep. Yet even then, faint photons will drift like embers, carrying the memory of everything that ever was. Perhaps those photons will meet again, colliding softly in some distant corner of forever. And in that spark, a new universe will awaken. A new sentence begun in the endless book of existence. That is the rhythm of all things. Creation, illumination, rest. You too are part of this rhythm, inhaling, exhaling, becoming. Light enters your eyes, is translated into meaning, becomes dream. In sleep, your brain replays the patterns, refracts them into visions. Even when your eyes are closed, light continues to write, softly, within you. Think of the future, then not as a place ahead, but as a continuation of the present's brightness. Every small kindness refracts. Every thought ripples outward in invisible wavelengths. We may not see their reach, but like starlight, they travel, perhaps forever. The greatest discoveries still waiting are not hidden in distant galaxies, but in our ways of seeing. Light is both the tool and the teacher, revealing that the clearer we look, the gentler we must be. Because to look closely is to affect, to change. The more tender our gaze, the more beautiful the truth that reveals itself. You stand once more at the threshold, the moment between knowing and wondering. Light bends across your face, across the room, across time itself. It touches your thoughts, folds into them, and becomes part of your imagining. You are illuminated not from above, but from within. And somewhere, a photon that left a star a billion years ago reaches you at last, completing its long journey through vacuum and dust, through eras and silence. It lands softly on your skin, and in that instant, you are connected to everything that ever was and ever will be. You breathe in. The air glows faintly in your chest. The atoms of your body hum in quiet conversation with the universe. And as your eyes grow heavy, you sense the continuity, that even sleep is a kind of light turned inward. The story of the universe continues to write itself through you, in each heartbeat, each dream, each small spark of thought. And just as you begin to drift into that luminous dark, a single question remains, one that glows softly, without urgency, at the edge of your awareness. If light can remember where it's been, can it also remember where it is going?